this is Piles of Books, and today I'm going to be talking about some books for spring. So the first pile of books that I'm going to be sharing are books that I have read that I think are a good fit for spring. And then the second is a pile of books that I would actually like to read this spring. So a bit of a spring TBR, or pile of possibilities, if you will. I really doubt that I will get to all of them this spring, but I am kind of going to try to prioritize them in this season. Alright, so I've got 5 here to recommend, and only one of them is a nonfiction, so I'm going to share that one first. And it is Introverted Mom by Jamie C. Martin. This says, your guide to more calm, less guilt, and quiet joy. This cover screams spring to me. I love how beautiful this cover is. This is such a really good book. I definitely need to read it again. It's been a few years since I last read it. But when I did read it, I just remember feeling like, I don't know, I felt very seen. So I had recently learned a little bit about like the true meaning of introvert versus extrovert, personality types and all of that. So I had seen this book recommended for obviously introverted moms, which I completely identify with. So yes, I read this. I really liked it a lot. She just gives some very practical tips for dealing with kids, like especially I think if you're a stay-at-home mom and you're with people all day, and as an introvert that is very draining. Even though you love your kids to pieces, like it is still hard on just your natural personality. So when I was raving about this book after I read it, somebody asked me, well, is it just an excuse basically for your feelings? And I definitely didn't feel that way. I mean, she does make you feel like there are other people like you, but also kind of, okay, how can we, use our introversion as a strength in our home and with our kids, while also nurturing ourselves. So it's kind of hard to classify a book like this as solely spring, and I wouldn't say it is, but just the cover is very springy, and it was really good. Okay, so now I've got some fictional ones. The next one is Hind's Feet on High Places by Hannah Hurnard. I'm not totally sure how to say her last name. Anyway, so obviously, again, just this cover looks very springy to me, and I know when I read this book, I want to say I read this in December or January, and I just remember thinking, oh, this would have been a good book to save for the springtime. This book is an allegory, much like Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, and her name is Much Afraid. So it says, follow Much Afraid on her spiritual journey through difficult places with her 2 companions, sorrow and suffering. Learn how Much Afraid overcomes her tormenting fears as she passes through many dangers and mounts at last to the high places. So just kind of the idea of, new birth, changing, awakening, all of that. This feels like a very springy book to me. While it is the same kind of concept as Pilgrim's Progress, this book, in my opinion, is much easier to read. And I do feel like this is kind of a love it or hate it sort of book. I definitely err on the side of loving it, but I can totally see where this would not be everyone's cup of tea. Alright, the next book I have is the second in the Anne of Green Gables series. This is Anne of Avonlea by Ella Montgomery. So really probably the whole Anne of Green Gables series could be inserted here, but this one specifically just felt like spring. So in this story, Anne is 16. Yeah, she's 16. I think it takes her through maybe like 17, but she just everybody's growing up, all of her friends, and some of them are going to be getting married. There are some that are moving away to college, and so she's just dealing with a lot of different emotions and things. So it's probably kind of hard to see, but these are all my dog ears. This is from before the days that I was tabbing books. So but obviously if I had been using tabs, this would be like all filled up. So really, I think that this probably is my favorite of the series, I would say. Just, as with Ella Montgomery's writings, the nature descriptions in here are absolutely beautiful, and it's very immersive. Like you feel like you're actually in the story just by her descriptions of the things around. It's so beautiful. I enjoyed the first book fine, but this book is what made me fall in love with the series and want to finish it. Okay, and next is Latty. This is by Jean Stratton Porter. So I mentioned her books several times now. They are definitely favorites. This one, obviously the cover is a very lovely blue, and I want to say that this goes through like a whole year or thereabouts. There is a section I know specifically like Christmas and winter, and those are fun, but again, just the story itself, kind of how people are changing and growing and all of that, feels like spring to me. So this is the story of, well, Laddie is the older brother, and then the story is narrated by a girl, and in the story, like, we never know her name, she just goes by little sister. And that took me a while to kind of muddle through in my mind, but anyway, but Laddie is in love, and it's this sort of forbidden love story. There's a neighboring family who are not from the area, and they're very wealthy, or they were very wealthy. Like there's some kind of just mystery shrouding their whole family, and Laddie is in love with the daughter. So then little sister kind of plays a part in helping them to get together, and there is a plot twist at the end that totally I did not see coming. It was fantastic. This book is so lovely. Now I will say that it took me a while to get into this one. This did not seem as engaging at the beginning as Jean Stratton Porter's other books to me. I read probably like a third of it, and then I put it down for a while because it just was not grabbing my attention. But then once I picked it back up and kept going in the story, it became more engaging over time. The next one I have is Cheaper by the Dozen. This is by Frank Gilbreth Jr. and then Ernestine Gilbreth Carey. So Ernestine is a sister and Carey is her married name. Anyway, this is the true, I think it's totally true, it could be fictionalized some, a true story of the Gilbreth family. There are 12 children and then Mr. and Mrs. Gilbreth. Okay, this book is so charming. It's hilarious. I actually was laughing out loud, and I don't typically do that in a book, but this one had me laughing out loud multiple times. So I grew up watching the like newer movie. I don't know if it's a Disney movie, I'm not sure who made it, but and I can remember my grandma saying, oh, I read that book when I was younger, and that information just went in one ear and out the other. And then it was not until, I don't know, I think 3 years ago, I think it was when maybe right before I had my youngest or right after I had him, I read this book, and it was so good. So in the story, what does he do? The dad he's a famous efficiency expert who believes a family can be run just like a factory. And there's mother, his partner, in everything except discipline. How they all survive such escapades as forgetting Frank Jr. in a roadside restaurant, or going on a first date with dad in the back seat, or having their tonsils removed en masse will keep you in stitches. You can be sure they're not only cheaper, they're funnier by the dozen. I love this book so much. This was super good. And again, you know, it's not necessarily a spring book, but it feels like spring to me, and it just kind of, after a long winter, which is I feel like what we had here this winter, a book like this that would get you laughing is definitely one that I think would be a good one. Alright, so that leads us into the stack of books that I would like to read this spring. The first one is the sequel to Cheaper by the Dozen. This is Bells on Their Toes. So I got this out from the library as soon as I finished Cheaper by the Dozen, and I just wasn't ready to read it yet. So I sent it back, and then I bought this, I don't know, several months ago, or maybe a year ago even. And I haven't read it yet. I would really like to, but the end of Cheaper by the Dozen kind of had me like, I wasn't expecting it. And so just going on with the story, I'm not sure totally how I'm gonna love this one, but really I would like to get to this one. The next one I have is The Story Girl by Ella Montgomery. So I have only ever read the Anne of Green Gables series by her. But I do have a few other ones here. So I think because Anne does feel like spring to me, in my mind automatically all of her books are springy, but that's not necessarily the case. But Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day had this one on her spring recommendations list here recently. I think that this is the next one that I want to read of hers. When she just talked about it in her video, I thought that I would add it to my list as well. Alright, the next one I have is Across 5 Aprils by Irene Hunt. So this is a Newbery Medal runner-up. This is a Civil War sort of book, and I don't really know any more than that, because it has the word April in it. I feel like it's appropriate to read for spring. I'm gonna guess that it's like 5 years, but I don't actually know that. But the little blurb here on the front has caught my attention the last few months, and so I do want to try to get to this one soon. It says, an intriguing and beautifully written book, a prize to those who take the time to read it, whatever their ages. And that was by the New York Times. So this one is going on my list. Alright, and the last 3 are all nonfiction. So I do really love to read nonfiction, and these are all, actually looking at them, they are all quite different, which is kind of funny, but I do like to read a variety of books. The first one here is by Dane Ortland. This is Gentle and Lowly, The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers. I don't know a ton about this one either, but with the sheep on it, it just looks like spring to me, and I've been wanting to get to this one for a while, so I'm definitely going to try to prioritize that one here really soon. Alright, the next one is Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv. So we are a very nature-loving family, you could say. We participated in the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge this is our 3rd year doing it. And this is a book that I see recommended by in those sorts of camps quite often. I've had this for a while, and I definitely am intimidated by the size, and the font isn't super small, but when this book came in the mail, I remember I was surprised at how big it actually was. This says, in his landmark work Last Child in the Woods, Richard Louv brought together cutting-edge studies that pointed to direct exposure to nature as essential for a child's healthy physical and emotional development. So getting my kids to go outside is that's never been an issue. But I do really enjoy reading about kids in nature and how helpful it is to them. That is something that I am very passionate about. Last one I have here is Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. This is a book. Rachel Carson was I don't know necessarily if environmentalist is the word, and I can't totally say that I'm an environmentalist. However, like I've mentioned before, I am very passionate about natural health, and we don't use a lot of chemicals and plastic and that sort of thing in our home, and I just really cannot get enough of reading about that. And this one blurb on the back here says, not war, but a plethora of man-made things is threatening to strangle us, suffocate us, bury us in the debris and byproducts of our technologically inventive and irresponsible age. I kind of love that. So anyway, this is one that is going on my list for the spring. Alright, so there are just a few books to maybe give you some ideas for your spring TBR, and then again, just the books that are going on my spring TBR. So I would definitely really like to get to these, but I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to, because spring is definitely a busy time around here. So thank you very much for being here. I would love to know what you plan to read for spring, and we will see you in the next video.